Hey guys, tonight we're heading to a place where rain doesn't fall often, but when it does, it's everything. You're standing barefoot on cracked earth, the kind that splits like dried paint, every crevice echoing months of silence. Around you, the sky sulks in dull bronze, thick with humidity, but stingy with release. Welcome to 14th century Burma in the shadow of the monsoon's unpredictability, where survival often came down to how well monks could store their storms. You probably won't survive this, by the way, at least not without a little help from some very smart barefoot men in saffron robes who knew more about clay and karma than most modern engineers. We're going to follow them step by step from the first sun-scorched season of desperation to the slow, steady rise of a rain tower that would hum with echoes of thunder long after the skies had cleared. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere far off or fascinating, tell me your location and your local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's listening and when. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through a flattened field that smells of dust and old sweat, following a path carved by sandaled feet long before your own. Even the insects seem to complain in the heat. Above you, the sun burns like it's angry, and around you, parched grasses whisper of the rains that haven't come. You pass a skeletal well where a boy lowers a bucket only to bring up a sigh. The older monks are talking in circles. Their faces are serene, but their brows crease beneath conical straw hats. There's no water left in the side pots. Even the sacred pond near the Bodhi tree has turned to sludge. Still no sign, murmurs one. They glance up at the horizon as if it owes them something. One of them fans himself with a palm leaf shaped like a teardrop. Another flicks a beetle off his robe and returns to meditation, apparently unfazed by the smell of hot dirt and despair. You walk past rows of monks seated under a sagging awning, bowls resting by their knees. Meals are smaller now, rice puffed with extra air pickles, sliced thinner lentil broth stretched with tamarind water. And always the silent clink of clay lids lifted each drop of water, measured like medicine. One monk older than any rain you've ever seen beckons you. Come, he says. Today you learn why we build towers. You follow him behind the sleeping quarters, past rows of banana trees that look like they've been weeping. He points at a patch of flat land where the soil has already been cleared. Around it lie tools, hand-molded spades, carved wooden frames, dried bundles of rice husk. We'll call this the Nadigara, he explains, literally house of the river, a rain catcher, a storage temple for storms. It doesn't look like much now, just a hopeful circle of earth, but soon it'll rise like a pot-shaped stoop of clay, layered on clay, until it's tall enough to whisper to clouds. You help drive the first stake into the ground. The monks don't use chalk or measuring tape. Instead, they pace in steps, draw lines in the dirt with knotted rope, and trace curves with lengths of bamboo tied like giant compasses. Everything is done by eye, by feel, by memory. Did the Buddha teach us this, you ask? The old monk smiles. No, but he did teach us to be ready. Across the way, a young novice is trying to catch dragonflies in a woven basket, failing spectacularly. Another kicks at a cracked jar with frustration. One trip, you think one cracked pot and a week of stored water vanishes into the ground. The urgency is subtle here. No one runs. No one yells. But everyone moves with the rhythm of people who know that the sky gives gifts on its own schedule and keeps receipts. And in the middle of it all, someone starts chanting softly. A Pali verse about impermanence, about how even rivers forget their course. You can't help but feel the truth of it here, with sweat pooling at your collarbones and the dust painting your ankles gray. A single bird calls. No answer. The land waits. You wait, but not idly. By dusk, the monks have sketched the circle and blessed it with a splash of what little water remains. They light sticks of sandalwood incense and tuck marigolds into the corners of the future. The old monk places a small copper amulet at the very center of the site, an offering to the spirits of rain. As stars bloom overhead, the monks sit in stillness. Tomorrow, the old one says, we start building. You glance again at the empty sky. Somewhere beyond that velvet dome, clouds are gathering. Probably, hopefully. But here tonight, it's only you, the monks, and the cracked, thirsty earth. Morning breaks slowly like molasses dripping down the edge of a spoon. The first sound you hear isn't birdsong. It's the creak of a wooden yoke sloshing faintly with twin clay buckets of water balanced on either side. A novice lugs them forward, with knees slightly bent, eyes fixed on the dust just ahead of his toes. He's careful. If he spills even a few drops, someone might make him sweep the entire courtyard with a toothbrush made of palm fiber. The monastery sits perched on a small hill overlooking what used to be a stream. Now it's just a scar in the land, a winding line of dry pebbles and discarded sandals. You follow the others through a wooden gate carved with lotus blossoms and peacocks, their painted feathers long faded to memory. The air inside the compound smells like damp robes, coconut oil, and the faint burn of last night's incense. One monk offers you a roasted banana leaf bundle sticky rice with turmeric and slivers of ginger hidden like treasure inside. It's not quite breakfast, but it quiets your stomach like a song. The monastery itself is an odd blend of grandeur and gravity. Carved teak pillars that lean a little to the left, eaves shaped like dragon jaws, and floors that sigh beneath every step. Despite the age and the heat, it's a living place. Chickens strut under the bell tower, a goat wanders into a prayer room and is gently escorted out by a novice with a broom and a whispered apology. You're led past the dormitory quarters, which are little more than elevated wooden huts on stilts each, with a rolled-up mat, a clay water jar, and sometimes a folded note tucked into the wall slats, usually a line of scripture or a reminder to practice compassion, even with the mosquitoes. In the central courtyard, the abbot sits cross-legged on a bamboo platform, reading aloud from a worn palm leaf manuscript. He doesn't stop when you arrive. Instead, he gestures for you to sit, then continues in a low, deliberate chant. He's reading from the Vinaya Pitaka, the monastic code, and today's verses, ironically or perhaps by divine timing, focus on water, how it must be handled, how it must not be wasted, how monks should never hoard it or bathe frivolously. One rule states that water left in a bowl must be either consumed or offered to a plant within the hour. Another insists that communal jars must be covered at all times. A third, somewhat inexplicably, warns against spitting into vessels used for rain collection. No one explains why, but judging by the seriousness in the abbot's tone, it probably involves a story too gross to retell. You notice the novices listening with varying degrees of focus. One is clearly fighting sleep, blinking like a lizard in sunlight. Another is doodling miniature clouds on his robe with charcoal from a burnt incense stick. You try not to laugh. Eventually, the abbot closes the manuscript and rests his palms on his knees. Rain is a blessing, he says, but even blessings require good containers. That's your cue. You follow the older monks outside toward the slope of the hill, where yesterday's circle still waits freshly marked and blessed. Nearby, a donkey is tethered beside a pile of dry clay and shredded straw. Two oxen chew lazily in the shade, ready for a day they definitely won't enjoy. Monks don't own possessions, but they do own knowledge, and this monastery has passed down its water-keeping techniques for generations, not just the prayers, but the physics. You're about to get a crash course in both. First, we soften the earth, one monk explains. Make it malleable, like the mind before meditation, which sounds poetic until you're knee-deep in a clay pit stomping alongside two oxen that seem far less spiritually inclined. The mud sucks at your ankles like a needy child, and every step releases a squelch that could double as a bad drumbeat. You mix straw into the clay to create cohesion, old rice stalks, coconut husk fibers, anything fibrous enough to hold shape, but soft enough to mold. Someone adds ash, which binds the clay and supposedly repels insects. Someone else jokes that it also keeps away hungry spirits, though historians still argue whether monks ever truly believed in such things or just used them as metaphors for mold. Eventually, you drag yourself out of the pit dripping and vaguely unrecognizable like some half-baked sculpture. You collapse under a tree as a novice splashes a ladle of water into your hands. You rinse your face. The droplets feel like mercy. And just when you think the hard part is over, you're handed a trowel made from a coconut shell and told to start shaping the first layer of bricks. Each monk works in rhythm. Press, smooth, turn. Press, smooth, turn. The bricks are laid not just to hold, but to curve, spiraling up and in like the inside of a conch shell. The tower must be both strong and hollow, allowing water to collect inside and stay cool even in the burning heat of noon. By sunset, the base begins to take form. You step back and see the outline of something sacred round and rising like a promise made in mud. Someone begins chanting again. This time, the words are lighter, a tone of thanks. The first day's work is done. The abbot claps you gently on the shoulder. Tomorrow, he says, you'll learn how to build a roof that drinks. You nod, exhausted but strangely proud. Not bad for your first day as a rain monk. Dawn hums before it sings. The sky is washed in that gray-blue hush, only seen before roosters wake, and the monastery stirs like an old cat stretching. You rise early, not from discipline, but from a single drop of condensation that lands squarely on your nose from the thatch roof, nature's very unceremonious alarm clock. Outside, the hill glows faintly as mist clings to the grasses. Monks move like shadows, already barefoot, already sweeping. The sound of straw brooms brushing clay paths has a rhythm to it, like soft percussion for a prayer no one dares interrupt. You pick up a broom, its handle worn smooth by countless hands before yours. It's not just about cleaning. Sweeping is meditation, they say. But you can't help noticing how the dust just relocates. Still, you keep going, pushing away leaves that fell out of pure defiance overnight. A novice nearby is struggling to balance a bamboo bucket full of wet clay. He wobbles, corrects, then wobbles again. The bucket tips one way, then the other, until it finally finds that sweet spot of perfect imbalance, somehow stable, somehow ridiculous. He grins at you as if to say, "I'm not dead yet." You watch him trudge toward the building site, stepping around yesterday's work with care. The cistern tower now rises knee-high, its base wide and perfectly round. More bricks wait nearby, drying in the sun like fat, sleeping lizards. Breakfast is modest pickled radish, a handful of puffed rice, and weak tamarind broth. You eat seated on a woven mat next to the others, all facing the same direction, eyes down, mouths quiet. The only sound is chewing, and one guy trying way too hard not to slurp. After breakfast, you return to the site. Today, your job is brick runner, ferrying half-dried bricks from the shaping mat to the builders on scaffolding. The scaffolding is made of knotted bamboo and faith. It creaks alarmingly when anyone climbs it, especially the monk everyone calls Big Brother, who is big in every sense. Still, he climbs like a monkey, holding a trowel in one hand and a brick in the other. You hand bricks up like offerings. The layers rise one spiral loop at a time like the shell of a sleeping snail. No mortar in sight, just mud and muscle. And patience. So much patience, it might be contagious. Don't rush, one monk says as you pass him another. Rain doesn't rush either. By midday, the tower reaches chest height. Someone jokes that it's starting to look like a giant earthen teapot. You laugh, but he's not wrong. You pause for water, just a sip. A novice pours it from a clay jug with a narrow spout that looks a bit like a swan's neck. The water tastes faintly of minerals and smoke drawn from a jar lined with burnt rice husks to purify it. A little crunchy on the aftertaste, but hey, it hasn't killed anyone yet. That you know of. As the sun rises higher, the mood shifts. Heat presses against your skin like a wet blanket fresh from the fire. The monks tie cloth around their heads and shoulders. You start to feel like you're cooking from the inside out. Someone fans a builder from below using a broad palm frond tied to a stick. Another waves incense smoke at the bricks, which may help them dry evenly, or may just smell nice enough to distract from the sweat. You learn that each layer must cure before the next is added. Rush the process and the tower buckles under its own ambition. One monk mutters that this happened once at another monastery, a cistern that looked perfect until it collapsed during a heavy rain and flushed their rice stores down the hill. It was a very clean disaster, he says. There's debate over how high the tower should go. Some monks argue for taller, claiming it catches more rain. Others say it's not the height, but the curve that matters. Shape dictates strength. Historians still argue whether these towers were influenced by Indian temple domes, or if the design arose independently in Burma, shaped more by mud than metaphor. During a break, you sit with a novice who's doodling the tower's outline in the dirt. He draws little birds on top. "Do you think they'll nest there?" he asks. You nod. Only the clever ones. Back at the buildwork resumes. Each brick is smoothed with a wet cloth before placement. Some bricks are etched with small symbols. fish lotus petals, even a monkey paw. For luck, one monk explains. Or maybe just for fun. The final act of the day is the laying of a capstone, not the true top, but the first brick of the narrowing neck. It's delicate work, and everyone holds their breath as Big Brother sets it in place. It wobbles slightly, then rests. A soft cheer rises, just a murmur of approval, but it feels loud in a place that normally speaks in whispers. You lie on the ground after staring up at the tower silhouetted against the dimming sky. It looks sturdy now, sturdy enough to hold water memory, maybe even a little bit of hope. One monk brings you a small bowl of jackfruit stew. It's sweet-spiced and almost makes you forget how much your shoulders hurt. Almost. You sleep deeply that night. In dreams, the tower grows taller than the clouds. The next day, you wake to the sound of bells, not the clanging kind, but the soft tapping of a wooden striker against a bronze rim. It rings 3 times, then stops. Time to move. You sit up groggily, rub your neck, and realize the mat has left a lattice pattern across your cheek. You step outside into the stillness. The air smells like it wants to rain, but doesn't know how. Heavy and expectant, it coats everything in a vague promise. The monastery is already alive. Monks glide from one task to another, their saffron robes fluttering like candle flames in a breeze that doesn't exist. This morning's chore, refilling the drinking vessels in the meditation hall, but first they need to be washed. You carry a stack of wide-brimmed clay bowls to the water platform. There, a barrel of stored rainwater, last month's lucky shower, is sealed tightly with a waxed cloth lid. You lift it slowly. The water inside reflects your face back at you, warped slightly by the hand-thrown curve of the jar. You dip a ladle carved from coconut shell and pour. Each drop sounds sacred. The monk beside you is scrubbing the base of another jar with ash and sand, murmuring a chant under his breath. He tells you the Buddha once said water must be handled like silk, softly, respectfully. You think about how you usually treat your water bottle back home, chuckle a little, then feel guilty. After the bowls are filled and aligned in neat rows, you join the others for the morning reading. Today, the senior monk picks a line from the Vinaya Pitaka that's both oddly specific and kind of hilarious. If a monk spits into a vessel used for rain collection, he must confess his offense and perform purification rituals. You try not to laugh, but the monk glances up and smiles. We learned that one the hard way. Apparently, many years ago, a novice misunderstood the purpose of a large clay jar beside the garden path. Let's just say the next rainfall didn't taste like victory. More than superstition, the rules around water reflect a truth monks have lived with for centuries. Once it's gone, it's gone. You don't waste what you can't summon. That's why every drop is logged, literally carved into bamboo slats that record rainfall, total storage levels, and even bad buckets that leak or smell odd. Water is memory, the abbot tells you later, tracing the rim of a jar with his finger. If we lose track of it, we forget ourselves. You nod as if you understand, which you kind of do, if only in the way you know that some truths live in the body, not the brain. Later, while helping clean the inner courtyard, you're told to rinse the stone steps. But here's the catch: no pouring allowed. You must flick water gently using a rag dipped into a narrow-mouthed jug. The goal is to clean without leaving puddles, because puddles evaporate, and evaporation is a thief. One monk, young, cheeky, and full of opinions, leans over and says, "In the next life, I hope to be reborn as a rain cloud. I'd do less scrubbing." You smirk, and more spitting. He nods solemnly, but only in the right jars. As the day heats up, you gather near the tower in progress. It now rises above head height with a narrowing mouth designed to funnel rainwater in and keep hands, insects, and curious squirrels out. There's talk of naming the tower, some joke about calling it Bhikkhu Gopalot, which you're fairly certain breaks some sort of rule, even if it's a good one. The abbot gives a short lesson on how water in Buddhist cosmology represents not just survival, but clarity, flow, and release. A troubled mind, he says, is like muddy water. Let it sit. It will settle. Ironically, the next moment is anything but settled. A novice trips while passing a jar of fermented rice, sending it tumbling into the half-constructed tower. The splash echoes like a curse. Everyone freezes. No one yells. No one blames. Instead, a monk calmly climbs into the tower's base with a sponge made from boiled bark and begins to scrub the inside wall. The novice stands nearby, red-faced, muttering apologies like a broken bell. Even muddy water can be cleared, someone murmurs. There's a deeper lesson in there, or maybe just a reminder to never run with soup. By late afternoon, the outer surface of the tower is ready for its first sealant layer. You help mix it a combination of fine clay powder tree resin and wait for it cow urine. Yes, cow urine. The monk in charge of application dips a twig brush into the thick, golden liquid like he's painting a masterpiece. The smell is assertive, but they swear by it. Apparently, it's antimicrobial and repels insects, also possibly ghosts. Historians still argue whether the practice had any real scientific basis or was more symbolic. Either way, it works, mostly. You hold your breath as you help brush it across the inside rim of the tower. It dries into a shiny, slightly tacky film like varnish with an attitude. As the sun sets, the scent fades and the tower gleams in the evening light like a giant ceramic lung ready to breathe in the rain. You sit with the monks for the evening, chant your body aching in all the good ways. The verse tonight is about impermanence, about how nothing lasts. Not the dry season, not the storm, not even the feeling of thirst. But for now, the tower stands, and that feels permanent enough. You wake up feeling like a bamboo pole left out in the rain, bent, cracked, and oddly sticky. Except, of course, there hasn't been any rain yet. Just the wish for it, thick as soup in the air. Outside, the tower is taller than ever. Its smooth belly now bulges out like a ripened gourd, and the monks move around it with the care usually reserved for holy relics or sleeping tigers. Today, you're told us about the roof that drinks. That's not just a poetic phrase, it's the actual purpose of the large leaf-lined canopy that will catch rain and funnel it into the tower's mouth. You squint upward at the wooden scaffolding rising beside the tower like the ribs of an unfinished bird. Your first task is surprisingly botanical fetching teak leaves. These aren't just any leaves. They're massive, tough as parchment, and water repellent, on one side basically nature's umbrellas. You and two novices hike into a grove nearby, where the trees grow thick and tall, their leaves rustling like distant applause. With a hooked blade, you cut the leaves carefully, keeping the stems intact. Each one, when held up to the light, shows a web of veins like an ancient map, fragile but essential. Back at the monastery, the monks have already begun lashing together a circular frame using bamboo strips. It's shaped like a giant parasol, angled ever so slightly inward. The teak leaves will be layered in overlapping rings like scales starting from the bottom and working upward. It's a technique passed down orally for centuries. No diagrams, no blueprints, just hands remembering what minds forget. You help pass leaves to the higher monks on the frame, climbing the scaffolding one cautious step at a time. It creaks. You pretend not to notice. As they fasten the leaves using twine made from banana fiber, you see how water will be guided along the curve between the seams and into a carved gutter that leads directly into the cistern's opening. Every angle is deliberate, every knot a whisper to the storm. Monsoon might visit tomorrow, someone says, peering at the sky. Or next week, or never. You nod solemnly. Meteorology here is more faith than science. Below, a monk sharpens a hollow bamboo shoot that will act as a spout. It's split and notched like a flute, except it sings with water instead of wind. Once fitted into place, it extends out from the leaf roof like a tongue tasting the clouds. There's a pause as everyone steps back. The canopy is done. From a distance, the entire setup looks like some kind of mystical fruit clay, body leaf skin bamboo stem just waiting for the sky to squeeze. To test it, someone climbs up with a pot of water and pours slowly. The stream follows the leaves, trickles into the chute, and plinks satisfyingly into the echoing hollow below. It works. A brief, polite round of applause ripples from the group because, of course, monks clap like they pray softly. Later, you help secure the base of the leaf roof with clay plugs and resin. The gaps are tiny, but each one is a potential leak, a place where a drop might escape. And around here, a drop is a universe. Why not just use a big pot, you ask one monk, genuinely curious. He smiles, because pots crack, towers endure. You can't argue with that. As you walk back toward the refectory for lunch, you pass the shadow of the tower. It's so tall now that it casts a perfect curve across the path, like the arc of a setting sun frozen in midair. It makes you pause. Inside the hall, the day's meal is simple: steamed cassava, boiled greens, and a small bowl of fermented bean paste that smells like a dare. You eat in silence, watching the condensation bead on your water jar. Even drinking feels sacred after a morning like this. One novice whispers to you, "My grandmother said the towers used to sing when they filled." Sing. He nods. The clay would creak. The water would echo. It sounded like monks humming in their sleep. You make a mental note to listen carefully next time. In the evening, a ritual takes place. The monks gather around the base of the tower, each carrying a small flower or bundle of herbs. You're handed a single white bloom, frangipani, soft and sweet-smelling, and told to lay it near the entrance spout. "We offer beauty," says the abbot, "to remind the rain it is welcome." You half expect the clouds to roll in right then. They don't. But the gesture lingers. Just before bed, you check the tower one more time. The roof gleams faintly under the moon, and the bamboo chute glistens with dew. You place your palm against the tower wall. It's cool and somehow feels alive. You whisper, "We're ready." The tower doesn't answer, but maybe that's the point. The air smells different this morning. Heavier, wetter. You wake up not to a sound, but to a feeling like the sky is holding its breath. Outside, the clouds are low and slow-moving, thick as old porridge, and the monks move with a purpose that says something is coming. No one says the word rain, saying it might scare it off. Instead, they hum chant sweep. Tasks take on a quiet urgency. The kitchen fire is stoked earlier than usual. Jars are inspected. Mats are rolled tighter. Robes are pinned with extra care. You glance at the rain tower. The leaf roof is slick with early dew. A few drops have already traced their way down the bamboo chute and into the cistern little scouts ahead of the real downpour. The monks assign you to leaf patrol, which it turns out is exactly what it sounds like. You and two others are tasked with checking the catchment canopy for signs of mold weakness, or worst of all, holes. You climb the scaffolding again, grateful that your feet no longer tremble with every creak. At the top, the view is different today. The sky isn't blue, it's the color of iron left in the rain too long. The jungle canopy below is motionless. Even the birds seem to have called a truce with the silence. You inspect each leaf, running your fingers along the spines. A few need replacing. One is starting to rot, curling at the edge like burnt parchment. You swap it out with a fresh teak leaf and bind it with banana cord, knotting it tight. It feels like preparing for a siege. Back on the ground, the abbot is laying out bundles of dried ginger and beetle leaves near the base of the tower. For the spirits, he says, and for the insects. You hesitate. Do the spirits eat beetle? He shrugs. Better safe than haunted. You chuckle but tuck a small ginger root into your robe pocket anyway, just in case. Around midday, the first drop falls. One fat drop, then another, then a scatter like fingers drumming on an empty drumhead. And then the sky breaks open. The sound is instant, louder than drums, softer than fire. It hits the canopy first, ricocheting across the teak leaves with a metallic hiss. Then it flows, spilling along the veins of each leaf, pouring down the bamboo chute in a rhythm that's irregular but beautiful. You run to the tower and peer inside. Water, real water, not drops, not drips, streams. Gurgling, spiraling, echoing off the curved clay like a whispered chant in a cathedral. You lean in closer and swear you hear singing. Nope, it's just the chute vibrating with pressure. But for a moment, you believe it. The monks cheer, which sounds mostly like exhaling loudly and smiling in unison. One novice actually whoops, then immediately looks ashamed. The abbot pats him on the head. "Let the rain do the shouting," he says. Over the next hour, the rain does just that. Buckets of it, sheets, curtains. You huddle under the meditation hall's overhang and watch the rain tower drink. The water line rises visible through a small inspection hatch, carved low in the side. You ask, how much can it hold? The abbot answers enough for a dry season or a very thirsty festival. Which, as it turns out, is a historical fact. These towers weren't just used for survival. They were often essential during Buddhist festivals, when visitors flocked to monasteries and local wells ran dry. Without the stored rain, ceremonies would be short and guests turned away, and monks left with little more than hope and half-cooked rice. But it wasn't always perfect. Historians still argue whether all monasteries used these towers or just the wealthier ones. Some records describe simple ground-level pits lined with cow dung and stone functional, but a far cry from the elegant clay towers like yours. The rain continues well into the afternoon. At one point, lightning strikes somewhere beyond the hills, and the sound rolls in like a dropped gong. The monks pause their work to bow in the storm's direction, a gesture of respect, or maybe insurance. You help place waxed cloth over the cistern's mouth once the waterline nears the halfway mark. Too much too fast, a monk warns, and it spills. Which would be tragic, not catastrophic, just very, very wasteful, like dropping a bowl of soup after fasting for days. You spend the rest of the day checking drainage channels. The tower doesn't just collect, it must also breathe. Too much humidity and the stored water could spoil, so monks dig narrow trenches around the base, sloped with careful geometry, to direct overflow safely downhill and away from dormitories, prayer halls, and chickens. Speaking of chickens, one bold hen takes shelter under the bamboo scaffolding and lays an egg. A monk gently retrieves it, places it in a bowl, and mutters, "Lunch decided itself." By dusk, the rain softens to a whisper. The leaves shine like polished emeralds. The tower is nearly 3/4 full. You return to your mat, damp and tired and giddy. And as you close your eyes, you hear it water, moving, echoing, singing softly to itself in the belly of a clay tower you helped raise. Not bad for a day in the rain. You wake to the smell of wet earth and the low rhythmic chirping of frogs who have declared themselves kings of the monastery. The storm has passed, but its fingerprints are everywhere. Mud tracks along the temple steps, droplets balanced on banana leaves like pearls, and the faint scent of ozone lingering in the early light. You pull on your robe, now slightly damp and smelling faintly of mildew and sandalwood, and step outside. The rain tower glistens. It looks proud, full, like a monk after a particularly good bowl of rice and mango chutney. You're assigned to morning inspection duty, which today involves climbing into the cistern. Yes, into. Not all the way, but enough to check for cracks, temperature shifts, and unwelcome guests, namely frogs, insects, and one very persistent gecko that seems to think it owns the place. A narrow bamboo ladder leads into the tower's belly. You descend slowly, careful not to slip. The interior is cool, markedly cooler than the outside. The air smells of damp clay lotus roots and something mineral like the inside of a cave. The walls feel damp to the touch but firm. No give, no sag. That's good. A monk peers in from above. Tap it. You knock gently on the wall. Tuck, tuck, tuck. A rich hollow sound, like a drum covered in velvet. This is how they check the structural integrity sound over sight. If it thuds, it's trouble. If it rings, all is well. You check the floor. The base is sloped slightly, funneling toward a central channel that leads to a secondary pot, a kind of overflow safety net. It's currently dry, which means the main chamber still has room to go. But something flickers in the water. You lean closer. Fish. Tiny darting silver specks. You blink. Did someone... The monk above chuckles. We added them last night. Apparently, this is a fringe practice with ancient roots adding fish to cisterns not for food, but for maintenance. They eat larvae, algae, and whatever else might spoil the water. Plus, they look nice, like a living offering. Historians still argue whether this technique was widespread or regional. Some believe it was inspired by Indian water tanks. Others argue it evolved independently in Southeast Asia. No one can agree, but everyone agrees the fish are cute. You climb out slowly and sit at the base of the tower, letting your feet dry in the morning sun. The abbot arrives holding a bowl of fermented jackfruit and sticky rice wrapped in banana leaf. He sits beside you, unwrapping it slowly. The tower is happy, he says. You ask, does it feel different when it's full? He nods, heavier, like it remembers. That idea sticks with you all day. You return to the monastery's workbench, where novices are crafting more bamboo shoots, backup components for the next tower. Each piece is smoothed with sand and rubbed with coconut oil. You run your hands over the surface of one and marvel at the simplicity. Just a hollow stick. But here it's the spine of survival. Next to the workbench is a bucket of lotus stems. Not the flowers, those are already floating in the cistern for aesthetic and purification purposes. These are for testing water turbidity. You didn't know that was even a thing monks worried about. But sure enough, they cut a stem into short lengths, drop it in, and watch how fast it discolors. Too fast. Water's too murky. You test one. It floats lazily, pale and clean. Pass. Back in the courtyard, the novices are playing a game you don't quite understand. It involves balancing clay cups of water on their heads while reciting chants. The loser has to scrub latrines. The winner gets first pick of mangoes. You join in, lose immediately, and get handed a very old broom. Worth it. Later, while sweeping near the east gate, you spot a monk in meditation beside the rain tower. He's not chanting, just listening. You approach quietly. Waiting for rain, you ask. He shakes his head. Listening to yesterday, and sure enough, you hear it too. Water shifting inside the tower, echoing faintly like wind passing through a conch shell. It's not constant, just an occasional glug or ripple, but it's there. Proof of what was and what might come again. Before evening, you help apply another coating to the exterior, this time a mixture of clay ground, tamarind bark, and powdered limestone. It dries to a dull bronze, sealing the outer shell against heat and termites. You ask why termites would even be interested in clay. They're thorough, a monk says. Fair enough. As night falls, the monks gather again to chant not for rain, but in gratitude. The storm has passed. The cistern is full. The fish are happy. Even the gecko got a name, Thawuna, which means blessed luck. You lay on your mat that night and imagine the rain tower breathing. Not like a person, but like a mountain slow deep and eternal. And just before you drift off, you swear you hear it again. Glug. Water dreaming. You wake before the bell today, stirred not by sound, but by the unusual stillness of the morning. The monastery is quiet, softer than usual, like the air itself is walking on tiptoe. Even the frogs from last night seem to have slipped into a hush. You stretch your limbs and wander barefoot to the rain tower, still damp from last night's brief shower. A light mist coils along the ground like a curious snake, and the tower looms above it like some ancient creature risen from the mud. The leaf canopy glistens faintly, shedding the last of its dew in slow, reluctant drips. A few monks are already at the site. One has slipped inside the tower's hollow to inspect the water's clarity again, while another is grinding something in a stone mortar that smells both sweet and sharp. Charcoal and tamarind seed, he explains. For filtration. You nod. Yesterday, it was lotus stems. Tomorrow, who knows, possibly mango peels or roasted bark. There seems to be an endless reserve of ideas in the monk's mental toolkit. Some are ancient, some are experimental, and some walk that slippery line between science and superstition. Inside the tower, it's cool and cavernous. The echo of even the smallest sound bounces gently. Your own breath comes back to you with a tiny delay. You lower yourself onto a bamboo plank laid across the top and peer inside again. The water level is nearly full now. You can just make out the curve of the floor below, dim and rippling. No fish this time, though you swear you saw one wink at you yesterday. You close the lid gently, careful not to jar the seal. The waxed cloth ring around the cap is surprisingly complex, stitched with threads soaked in boiled neem leaves to repel insects and prevent mildew. It's tied off with a small knot known as a silent prayer loop. The name alone is enough to make you pause and smile. By mid-morning, you're helping clear brush around the drainage channels that ring the tower's base. They aren't just there to protect the tower, they direct overflow into a side garden where bananas, taro, and wild ginger grow in crooked rows. You find a frog lounging in one of the bends, legs splayed like he owns the place. He probably does. The channels are clever, if a bit muddy. They slope just enough to move water, not enough to erode. That's the difference between wisdom and guesswork, you're told. A novice asks why there isn't a cover on the side garden pool, so spirits can drink. A senior monk answers. This earns a raised eyebrow. Or the monk continues because frogs are very poor at lifting lids. Either way, the pool serves a second purpose. It cools the surrounding air. The evaporation chills the breeze, which is then caught by a low stone wall, funneled toward the tower to help reduce internal condensation. The abbot later refers to this as passive climate magic. You suspect he's joking, but only halfway. You spend the hottest part of the day sitting under a teak tree weaving small mats from dried water hyacinth fibers. These are not for sleeping, they're for padding the inside of the inspection lid to prevent clay chipping during high winds. Everything matters, says a monk beside you, even softness. It's easy to believe him here. During your break, you wander into the scriptorium where the monks copy sacred text by hand. You're surprised to find a small scroll tied with red string and labeled simply Rain Practices, Variant B. You open it cautiously. Inside are illustrations crude but charming of other cistern designs. One shows a double-chambered system with sloped tunnels. Another includes charcoal bricks stacked like honeycombs. A third diagram shows what appears to be a wind-powered pump, though it looks suspiciously like a child's toy pinwheel. You ask a nearby monk if these were ever actually built. Some, he says, some never left the dream. He pauses, tapping the scroll gently. But dreams are blueprints too. As dusk approaches, you find yourself back at the tower, resting against its warm curve. You feel the faint vibration of water shifting inside. It's not loud, not like the storm, but steady, like a cat purring deep inside a drum. You imagine someone 100 years from now, sitting just like this, listening to a different storm, grateful for the same tower. There's something comforting in that, a kind of inheritance made of clay and intention. Dinner is boiled yam mung bean soup and a single strip of sun-dried mango. Not much, but it tastes better than any feast you've had elsewhere. Probably because you've earned it. Probably because everything tastes better when you've built the jar it came from. That night, you lie on your mat and listen not just to the wind or the monks snoring softly across the hall, but to the silence inside the tower, where thousands of droplets float together in one dark, cool body of memory. And you sleep like rain falling into still water without a splash. You're halfway through a bite of pickled eggplant, sour, squishy, surprisingly addictive, when a novice bursts into the refectory barefoot, breathless and grinning like he's swallowed the sun. The water's warm. Everyone pauses, chopsticks hover midair, bowls are frozen in hands. Someone slowly lowers a ladle like it's a weapon they forgot they were holding. Warm water. That can mean many things: a brewing problem, a failing seal, or maybe the sun simply got too intimate with the cistern. In any case, it's not ideal. You and 3 others rush outside, still chewing robes flapping in the wind. At the base of the tower, the inspection hatch is already open. The senior monk is leaning in, hand dipped to the wrist, eyes narrowed like a tea connoisseur, judging the temperature of a brew. He nods, then gestures for you to try. You kneel, scoop some water into your palm, and feel it. Warm. Not hot, but noticeably above the cool stillness you've come to expect. Like bath water that's lost its edge. The tower isn't cooking its contents, but it's definitely not refrigerating them either. Sunshift says the abbot stepping up behind you. We'll need shade. Turns out this is not a new problem. While the towers were designed to resist heat through thick clay walls and strategic placement, unusual weather could still outwit them. This week, the sun's been hitting from a sharper angle morning light instead of the usual high noon, and it's warming the eastern curve of the tower. The solution A: makeshift awning. You gather with the monks beneath a mango tree to brainstorm. The answer, as it often does here, lies in leaves. Giant banana leaves, in fact, broad green and flexibly obedient when lashed to bamboo poles. A team fans out across the nearby grove, gathering the best leaves they can find. You end up with a stack the size of a mattress. The smell is sharp and earthy, and your arms itch with sap by the time you're done, but you've never felt more monk-like than you do now, dragging a parade of banana skins back toward a water tower, like some ancient air conditioner mechanic. The awning is built quickly lashed together with vine and twine, then hoisted with pulley lines attached to 4 corner poles. When complete, it forms a graceful cowl over the tower's sun-facing side, part armor, part shade, part celebration. To secure it against wind monks hang small clay weights from the edges, some carved with spirals, others painted with tiny fish or birds. It adds flair and function in equal measure. The tower now looks like it's wearing a floppy festival hat. Later, you're asked to monitor the water temperature for the rest of the day. Every hour, you lower a strip of thin copper marked with pigment into the tank. The color shift tells you what the water won't, how it's feeling. By late afternoon, it has cooled noticeably. The shade is working. Like a monk's mind during meditation, someone says, "Cool, still protected." You smile, but also take note of the metaphor. Here, everything is a lesson, even banana leaves. Over the evening meal, today's special fermented tea leaf salad, salty and perfect. The novices whisper about the time a tower overheated so badly it cracked. According to the tale, the clay split with a scream that sounded like a demon escaping, and the entire cistern drained overnight into the earth, never to be seen again. Probably a small fissure and a bit of thunder, says a senior monk, but I like their version better. Historians still argue whether such tales were based on real events or simply became legends to scare novices into better maintenance habits. You offer to check the lower rim of your own tower for signs of stress. As twilight settles in, you crawl beneath the base where the clay rises up like the sides of a giant earthen bowl. You run your fingers along the seam, feeling for cracks, for softness, for anything that hints at betrayal. Nothing. Still strong, still humming. You rest your back against it and stare up through the leafy awning which now rustles softly in the wind. The stars peek through the gaps like nosy neighbors. Someone hands you a bowl of sweet coconut rice and roasted sesame seeds. A peace offering from the kitchen, or maybe just good timing. You eat slowly, savoring each bite. Before bed, you return to the tower with a small cloth bundle in hand. Inside 5 smooth river stones. You drop them one by one into the cistern, watching the ripples spread. Not for science, not for testing, just for listening. Each stone makes a different sound. One plinks, one plops, one thuds quietly and disappears. You like the third one best. It's tradition, apparently. A quiet practice among some monks to tune the tower with offerings. Some use coins, others flower petals. You choose stones, smooth, heavy, real. The tower holds them all, without judgment, and as you drift off to sleep, later that night, you picture the water cradling those stone soft ripples, swaying them like lullabies. The tower is warm again, but not too warm. Just held. The morning sun filters through the canopy of banana leaves, casting strange green light across your face. You blink awake to the distant clatter of sandals on stone and the unmistakable thump of someone carrying something too large too early. The tower's gotten a delivery, apparently. You stumble outside, rubbing your eyes, only to find 2 monks lugging what looks like a carved wooden toad, half sculpture, half storage chest, and fully mysterious. It's placed beside the rain tower with great reverence. A few novices gather around whispering theories. Is it a shrine? A seat? A weather toad? Turns out it's none of the above. It's a container and offering box for ritual water ladles, and you lucky initiate that you are get to polish them. The toad chest opens with a creak and reveals a collection of long-handled coconut ladles, each slightly different in shape and size. Some are stained from years of tea leaf dye. Others are wrapped at the base with braided straw, giving them the appearance of ceremonial wands. You count 17. These are the ladles used when monks bathe during the dry season, 1 scoop at a time, no more, no less. It's not about cleanliness, it's about restraint. You sit cross-legged in the courtyard and begin scrubbing the handles with a rag dipped in citrus oil. As you work, a monk approaches and gently places a small clay figurine beside you, a crouching frog with a chipped eye. For the tower, he says, reminds us that not all water creatures live in rivers. It's a subtle joke, but it lands. You tuck the frog near the base of the structure, just beside a curled vine that's begun wrapping itself around the drainage channel. The tower is starting to attract decorations like a monk who keeps getting gifted scarves. No one's sure what to do with them, so they stay. Bathing time comes mid-morning, and you're invited to observe. In a shaded alcove behind the rain tower, monks line up with small bowls, cotton cloths, and the coconut ladles you just polished. One by one, they step onto a stone platform, pour a ladleful over their shoulders, and scrub in silence. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of stillness in motion. No splashing, no chatter, just water trickling down brown skin steam, rising into the warm air, and the occasional slap of wet cloth against tile. You notice the youngest novice hesitate. He looks at the ladle, then at the water, then back at the ladle. His lips move in silent calculation. You whisper, "Just one." He nods, dips and pours. The water arches like glass and the sun lands on his back and disappears into a drain lined with hibiscus petals. A monk beside him nods in approval. It's a strange thing to realize how little water is needed to truly bathe when you're mindful. No hot shower, no soap foam party, no singing into a loofah, just intention, one ladle at a time. Afterward, the bathing platform is washed down with what little overflow remains, and the ladles are returned to the frog box. You slide the lid shut with a gentle tap. The toad seems pleased. In the afternoon, you help prepare a filtration cone using crushed charcoal rice, husk ash, and folded banana leaves. It's old tech, but it works. Water is poured through the layers and emerges cleaner, crisper, and smelling faintly of firewood and starch. You test the filter on a sample from the cistern. The result is clear, cold, a hint of clay, but otherwise perfect. A senior monk tastes it and smiles, just like it used to be. You ask him what he means, and he explains that monks once believed water had memory, not just in a poetic sense, real memory, that it could remember storms, chants, emotions. Some even believed that angry handling of water could sour it. Historians, he says, with a smirk, still argue whether that was mysticism or microbiology. Regardless, no one is rough with the water. Later, you join a chant beside the tower. The abbot reads a passage about rivers and tears, how both carve the earth in silence, how both are necessary. The tower looms behind him, casting a long, crescent-shaped shadow across the stone. You wonder how many chants the clay has heard. How many voices have echoed against its walls? How many stories have fallen into it with the rain? As night falls, the tower is fitted with a woven reed mat that's lowered like a curtain across the intake chute. It's designed to keep out falling leaves, curious birds, and the occasional ambitious squirrel. You watch as a novice pins a small sachet of herbs, lemongrass, basil, and tamarind skin just above the chute. For scent, he says, and maybe luck. That night, your dreams are full of water. Not storms, not floods, just water clear and slow, moving through your fingers like memory. And in the middle of it, all the sound of a single ladle, dipping, pouring, one scoop at a time. The sun is barely up when the first mosquito bites you square on the knuckle. You slap miss and grumble quietly so much for silent meditation. By the time you reach the tower, a dozen monks are already gathered near the base, murmuring over something unseen. You shuffle closer. Inside the water, just beneath the surface, float 3 perfectly intact lotus blossoms. White, delicate, open. They weren't there yesterday. Purification offering, someone whispers. You lean in, watching how the blossoms drift in gentle spirals, barely disturbing the surface tension. It's like watching incense smoke float underwater. One blossom bumps the clay wall and bounces softly away. You'd heard of this before a practice where monks floated lotus flowers in rain cisterns, not just as decoration, but as natural filters. The petals contain trace amounts of tannins and mild antimicrobials. Not exactly a cure-all, but they discourage stagnation. And frogs, allegedly. Some claim the flowers absorb impurities of thought. Others think they just look nice. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic or scientific. Probably both. You help add a few more blossoms, gently dropping them from the rim. They land like feathers, making not a sound. The water reflects the soft petals and the rising sky, layering light upon light. Later, you're assigned to inspect the drain channels again. It's thankless work made worse by the smell, a heady mix of mud-old leaves, and something you suspect used to be a mango. Armed with a curved stick and a rag, you dig out a week's worth of gunk from one of the lower tunnels. Your reward, a small freshwater crab, waving one claw in protest. You relocate him gently to the garden pool. He'll forgive you eventually. Around mid-morning, the abbot calls for a scenting session. You raise an eyebrow. It's not a bath. It's not a ritual. It's something in between. Using herbs dried on woven racks, the monks steep bundles of fragrant leaves, lemongrass, clove, kaffir, lime, betel, tamarind husk, and soak small sachets of cotton in the mixture. These bundles are then tied to strings and lowered into the cistern like underwater incense. It refreshes the mind, one monk explains, and confuses the mosquitoes. You tie one yourself, adding a scrap of dried orange peel just for flair, and lower it carefully. The moment it touches water, it releases a curl of scent that drifts up subtle and clean. You sit back and breathe it in. It's oddly comforting, this act of scenting water meant only to be used sparingly, but it's part of the rhythm here. Treat even stored water like it's sacred, not because it is, but because pretending long enough makes it so. In the afternoon, you help teach a visiting group of village children how the cistern works. They arrive in a noisy cluster, clutching bundles of boiled rice and making wide, amazed eyes at the tower. Does it go all the way to the other side of the world, one boy asks. You kneel beside him and say, only if you fall in very quietly. They giggle. You walk them around the structure, showing the leaf canopy, the inspection hatch, the drainage slope. A monk pours a little water from a ladle onto a lotus leaf to show how it beads and runs perfectly. The children gasp like it's a magic trick. Maybe it is. One girl gently touches the wall. It's cold, she says. Another boy whispers, "Do monks sleep inside it during storms?" No, says the novice guide. Only frogs. As the sun begins to slide down the sky, the children tie strips of dyed cloth to a nearby branch, a practice borrowed from local animist tradition. The cloths flutter in the wind, sending blessings skyward. One is printed with the image of a water buffalo, another a pair of joined hands. The abbot doesn't stop them. He watches, quietly nodding. Water welcomes all, he says, so we welcome their stories too. That night, as monks sip hot ginger tea and chant beside the tower, you walk slowly around its base. The lotus blossoms still float inside, soft and serene. The scent of herbs still lingers faintly in the air. Somewhere in the distance, a child's cloth flutters. You place a small stone near the frog figurine and whisper thanks. And for just a moment, you imagine the tower listening. You wake to thunder, but not the crashing kind. It's low and distant, like a belly grumbling beneath the earth. A warning, or maybe a promise. You sit up and immediately notice the humidity. It's like walking through soup. The air presses against your skin, and even the teak floorboards of the monastery seem to sweat. Everyone moves slowly today, not from laziness, but reverence. Something's coming. You grab a broom and begin sweeping near the rain tower, now almost hidden behind the banana leaf awning and its growing population of offerings, dried flowers, clay beads, and one suspiciously realistic wooden lizard someone clearly carved with too much time on their hands. Your task this morning is simple in theory. Clean the overflow channels. Again, you sigh and head toward the lower slope where a trench curves away from the cistern like a lazy stream bed. You crouch and begin scooping out damp leaves, clumps of silt, and a lone sandal. How-hoos. Your fingers brush against something smooth and round. You pull it up, an old clay whistle shaped like a bird, its beak chipped. You blow on it. A low fwit echoes through the air. A nearby monk turns. "Keep it," he says. "The spirits like music." You tuck it into your sash, half convinced it might actually be true. After lunch, sticky rice with mung bean paste, you join a group assembling a rain fence. It's not to block the rain, it's to channel it more effectively toward the catchment leaves. Made from woven reeds and tied to low wooden stakes, the fence is curved in a crescent shape, hugging the wind direction. When heavy rain comes, the idea is to slow the flow just enough to reduce splash loss. You hammer one of the posts into the soil with a flat rock. It bounces back. The monk beside you smirks. "Try again, Goliath." You swing harder. This time it sticks, barely. There's a rhythm to the work tie stake press adjust. The monks don't speak much, but their hands move in harmony, like the pulling of silk from a cocoon, gentle but firm. You watch imitate fall into step. In the middle of the setup, a novice lays a long strip of dried coconut fiber along the trench lip. It's there to catch debris before it reaches the mouth of the rain spout, a natural filter. You help press it into place, pinning it down with small hand-painted tiles scavenged from a ruined stupa. One bears a faded image of a lion, another a stylized eye. You pause. Are we decorating or engineering? Both, the abbot says as he walks past, hands clasped behind his back. Always both. The afternoon turns darker. Clouds begin to swirl overhead, like ink dropped in milk. The air grows quieter. Even the cicadas go mute, which is how you know something serious is coming. Monks begin to move faster, reinforcing ropes, tying down tarps, stacking sandbags along the downhill side of the monastery walls. You're handed a bundle of twine and told to help lash the banana leaf awning tighter over the cistern roof. You climb the frame, fingers slick with anticipation. As you work, you notice the roof's curve again. How perfect it is. How it mimics the shape of a stupa, of a monk's bowed head, of a cupped hand. There's design here that goes beyond practicality. Back on the ground, the abbot calls for a circle. Everyone gathers around the base of the tower. In the center, he places a small earthen pot filled with sesame seeds, ginger root, and what appears to be dried eel skin. You raise a brow. A local tradition, someone whispers, to ask the rain to be generous, not greedy. The chant begins low and steady, like rain already falling in the throat. You don't know the words, but you close your eyes and hum along the vibration resting in your chest like a sleeping bird. As the wind picks up, you open your eyes. The tower looms in front of you, unmoving. Ready. One by one, the monks tap the clay wall with their knuckles as they leave. Not a ritual necessarily, just a habit. A way of saying stay strong without saying anything at all. You copy them. The first drop lands on your nose, then another, and another. Within minutes, the storm returns no longer a whisper, but a chorus. It drums on the leaves, sings through the bamboo spout, crashes into the cistern in great splashes of sound and motion. You shelter beneath the reed fence with a few others watching the tower do its work. The rain doesn't fight it. It folds into it as if the structure was built from the bones of storms themselves. Somewhere behind you, a novice squeals with joy, running barefoot through a puddle. A monk sighs. Another smiles. In that moment, soaked, shivering, and half blinded by mist, you understand something. This tower isn't just for water. It's for the waiting, the building, the hope. You wake up damp, but not uncomfortably, so just that sticky kind of damp that reminds you the world outside is still dripping with last night's rain. Your robe clings to one shoulder like a stubborn memory, and the mat beneath you smells faintly of mildew and jasmine incense. Outside, the courtyard glistens like polished stone. Rain has soaked the earth, soaked the wood, soaked even the very air. Everything feels heavier today, but not in a bad way. Like the monastery has taken a deep breath and now exudes contentment. The tower, unsurprisingly, is glowing. Not literally, but close enough. The clay looks richer, darker. The bamboo shoot still drips at its tip with lazy rhythm. You approach it the way you'd approach a sleeping ox, respectfully and with mild awe. A monk waves you over. Come, he says. It's time for the blessing count. You blink. The what now? Turns out it's time to measure how much water the tower has stored, not with rulers or gauges, but with sound. A wooden rod wrapped in cloth is tapped gently along the outside of the tower, from base to top, one pace at a time. Each spot makes a different note depending on how full the water is behind that section of wall. It's music. Rain music. One monk taps another, listens with closed eyes, and a third marks faint charcoal lines on a piece of bark paper. It takes a long time, but no one seems rushed. The notes change slowly as the rod ascends low, low, mid-higher, higher silent, the air zone as they call it. 72% full, the abbot finally announces. Plenty. A novice asks, what if it gets too full? The answer, a simple overflow system, a side spout tucked low behind a screen of vines. If the water ever reaches a critical level, it will exit there, trickling down a carved clay channel toward the garden pool and a series of thirsty banana trees. One monk claims the bananas grow sweeter after overflow season. Another claims that's nonsense, but eats them anyway. You help clean the overflow spout again and find it home to a small family of snails. You rehouse them in a gourd bowl and carry them to the pond where they immediately vanish into the muck, probably cursing you in snail language. Next on the list, internal ladder check. It's your job to climb into the tower today using a newer bamboo ladder that creaks less than the old one and has rattan hand grips. As you descend, the air cools instantly. It's like slipping into a cave made of breath and memory. The water below shimmers in the low light, disturbed only by the occasional darting shadow of one of the minnows now living in the cistern. You crouch by the inner rim and reach in. The water is cool, almost cold. The recent rains have refreshed the supply and drawn the temperature back into the ideal range. You whisper to the fish, "Good job." Back above, monks are discussing future additions. One suggests adding a second smaller cistern beside the first, more of a backup reservoir. Another suggests building a shaded shelter nearby so older monks can sit and meditate closer to the water. Someone else proposes a wooden bench. The suggestion is met with scandalized gasps. A bench. Here for sitting. Yes, comes the reply. For watching it rain. You quietly approve. Later, a group of monks gather to polish the clay exterior with palm oil and lime dust, a method used once every moon cycle to keep the tower sealed and gleaming. You join in your hands, slowly finding the rhythm dab or rub circle. The clay responds with a soft shine like it enjoys the attention. You notice that someone has etched a tiny mark into the side of the tower, barely visible but deliberate. A fish and a cloud. You don't ask who did it. You just add a swirl next to it. A wave maybe, or wind. By late afternoon, the clouds return. Not the kind that threaten, but the kind that drift. Lazy, full-bellied, and tinged with light. The air smells of basil and wet bark. The abbot calls for a story circle. The monks gather beneath the teak pavilion and share tales of past monsoons. One recounts the time lightning struck a storage shed, but the rain was so heavy the fire went out before it spread. Another remembers a season so dry they used cloth to catch dew from leaves each morning, wringing it out drop by drop into a single jar. "My favorite cup of tea came from that dew," he says, smiling. "It tasted like morning breath and hope." Historians still argue whether such extreme water harvesting practices were common or exaggerated over time. But no one argues that monks, especially in 14th century Burma, were masters of adaptation. As the sun begins to set, the tower catches the light in full. The outer coating glows faintly, still damp from your polish. The bamboo shoot glints like a silver tongue. The catchment leaves rustle, whispering the last of the day's secrets into the wind. You step close one last time and rest your palm on the tower wall. It's warm again, but not from the sun. From inside, water held in darkness waiting. You awaken in the hush just before dawn, when even the crickets take a break and the air holds its breath. A thin fog clings to the ground, curling around your ankles as you walk barefoot toward the tower, the way you might approach a sleeping friend after a long night. The ground squelches slightly underfoot, still saturated from the previous evening's brief but generous rain. Today, the monks are preparing for something they call the listening. No one explains it directly. They just give you a look that says, "You'll know when it happens." You find yourself seated on a woven mat near the base of the rain tower, where the clay wall glows faintly gold in the soft early light. Around you, monks settle into place one by one, forming a silent ring. Some close their eyes. Some rest their hands on their knees. No one speaks. At first, you don't hear anything. Just the occasional rustle of a robe, the distant bleat of a goat, a frog clearing its throat with great theatricality from the pond nearby. But then something shifts. You begin to hear the tower. It's not a sound exactly. It's more like a presence, a hum, a low, slow rhythm coming from deep inside its belly. As the sun rises, the clay warms, the water expands, and subtle vibrations rise up through the structure, whispering their way through the bricks. Glug, tick, drip, a chorus of ancient plumbing and patient breath. The abbot opens one eye. It's remembering, he says softly. You nod, pretending to understand. But in a way you do. After the listening, the monks disperse without a word. No one claps, no one congratulates the tower. The quiet is the applause. You're sent to check the rooftop catchment again. The teak leaves held up beautifully in the rain, but a few show signs of wear, frayed edges, small holes, one leaf curled into itself, like it's done with this whole rain business. You replace the damaged ones, carefully weaving the new leaves into the overlapping shingle pattern. The smell is fresh, sharp, full of sap. A novice below hands you more twine, squinting up through the dappled light. He's barely tall enough to reach your foot with the bundle, but he tries. Careful you warn, just as a gust of wind wobbles the scaffolding. He grins. If you fall, at least the tower will catch your water. The scaffolding holds. Once the leaves are secured, you're invited to join in an odd little ritual called the listening ladle. It involves scooping water from the cistern, not to drink, not to bathe, but to listen. You sit on a low stool coconut ladle in hand and dip. The water pours back in with a note. You do it again and again. Each scoop has its own tone depending on the angle, the speed, the depth. Some monks believe these sounds help detect subtle shifts in the cistern, like internal temperature changes or shifting water levels. Others say it's just soothing. Either way it works. You feel your breath slow, your thoughts settle. You scoop, pour, listen. Nearby, a monk adds a bundle of dried basil and pandan leaves to the scenting pouch. The aroma wafts out like an offering to the air. It smells like tea memory and something just on the edge of being familiar. You're later asked to help with maintenance of the inspection hatch. This involves rubbing oil onto the inner rim, sealing it against swelling or cracking. You crouch there for a long time, your hands darkened with palm oil, smoothing the surface slowly, almost lovingly. At one point, you glance down into the water and see your reflection warped, softened. Then it vanishes with a ripple as something below disturbs the surface. Probably a fish, or a frog, or maybe just the tower itself stretching. In the afternoon, the monks prepare a set of small clay jars for an unusual purpose, water tasting. You raise an eyebrow and a monk laughs. Water is like language, he says. It has dialects. Each jar contains water drawn from different sections of the cistern, the upper cooler layer, the middle body, and the deepest pocket drawn through a hollow reed fitted with a hand-carved stopper. You taste each in turn. The top layer is brisk mineral, the middle is softer, smoother, the deep water darker, heavier somehow. Not in flavor, but in feel, like it's holding stories. The abbot watches you. The best cup of water, he says, is the one that makes you silent after drinking it. You sit back and say nothing. He nods. As the day draws to a close, the monks hold a brief ceremony. Nothing elaborate, just a circle of palm leaf fans passed hand to hand. One for each day the cistern has remained full. 32 so far. They fan the tower itself gently. A symbolic gesture. You join unsure, then find the rhythm. Woof! 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 The tower doesn't move, doesn't respond. But somehow it feels cooler afterward. That night, you dream of water again. But this time, it speaks. Just one word repeated softly. Remember. By now, walking to the rain tower has become automatic. You step around the same root wave at the same chicken and duck under the same low-hanging banana leaf that insists on greeting you with a wet slap to the forehead. It's not annoying anymore. It's tradition. Today, however, things are a little different. A group of visiting monks has arrived from another monastery far across the dry plains to the south. Their robes are a slightly deeper shade of saffron, and they walk like men used to wind. Their feet are dust-colored, their eyes sharp. They've come to see the tower. You find yourself assigned as a sort of informal guide because, according to one novice, you explain things like a confused goat, and people like that. You decide to take it as a compliment. The visiting monks examine the structure slowly, reverently. One runs his fingers along the outer wall, tapping lightly. Another crouches to inspect the drainage channels. A third, clearly the eldest, leans in to sniff the water through the bamboo chute. He says nothing for a long time. Finally, it remembers the sky. You smile. We try not to let it forget. There's an impromptu exchange of ideas. The visitors share stories of their own towers, some shaped like gourds, others like bells. One even describes a series of squat square cisterns painted with protective symbols in red ochre and guarded by small spirit houses carved from teak. We collect fog sometimes, one monk says, with cloth nets strung between poles. Morning mist gives us enough to boil rice. You glance at your own sky, imagining nets like spiderwebs straining ghosts from the air. It's both beautiful and a little sad. Historians, of course, still debate whether fog harvesting was ever widely practiced in monastic Burma or only in arid regions near the Arakan Hills. But here among friends, no one's debating. They're just nodding, sharing, remembering. The abbot invites the visitors to participate in a ceremonial refill, even though the tower is already nearly full. This time, it's not about water, it's about unity. A large clay basin is brought out, and each visitor pours a small bowl of water into it, some from their monastery's wells, others from jars carried for days. Mixed together, it forms what the monks call mutual rain. You carry the basin up the scaffold with two novices. It sloshes heavily, murmuring with every step. When you reach the chute, you pour it slowly. The water trickles down the bamboo channel and into the cistern with a rich, rounded glop. It's a small gesture, a symbolic act, but everyone watches. Afterwards, one of the visiting monks ties a piece of red thread around the tower's central support beam. For protection, he explains. Or luck, depending on who you ask. The abbot doesn't object. Instead, he adds a piece of yellow cloth folded twice. Someone nearby mutters, "If we add anything else, the tower will start applying for monastic ordination." There's laughter. Later in the day, you're asked to help make tower paper. This is new. It's not actual paper, but thin pressed clay sheets dried in the sun and etched with short prayers or water blessings. These sheets are placed near the cistern's base or embedded in its outer coating like messages in a bottle. Your hands are guided by a senior monk as you press palm bark fibers into wet clay and smooth it into squares. Once dry, you etch your first inscription using a sharpened bamboo sliver. May this tower remember the rains that forget us. It's not profound, but it feels honest. The visitors are shown the scenting sachets next. One monk offers to contribute a blend from his own region, dried guava leaf ginger, and something that smells suspiciously like old socks, but is apparently very good for keeping lizards away. You help tie the bundle and lower it into the cistern. It bobs once, then vanishes beneath the surface swallowed whole. In the evening, a feast is prepared, not lavish, but celebratory. Pumpkin stew, grilled plantain slices, and a soup so spicy it seems to peel thought from bone. Everyone eats slowly, quietly, gratefully. After the meal, the monks gather again by the tower. A single candle is placed at its base and lit. One by one, monks offer a silent bow. The eldest visitor speaks. This tower is a teacher, he says. It holds not just rain, but restraint, not just silence, but songs. You sit beside it after everyone leaves back pressed to the warm clay, watching the flame flicker against the surface. You think about how many storms it has held, how many voices have echoed inside it, how many mornings began with a drip, a scoop, a silence. You whisper good night and swear you hear it answer back. Just one soft ripple. The visitors are gone by the time the morning bell sounds. You wake to an odd emptiness, not sadness exactly, but a quiet that's grown used to being filled. The courtyard feels wider, the paths seem longer. Even the tower looks slightly taller, as if standing up straight now that it doesn't have to be modest in front of guests. You pass the red and yellow threads still tied around the central beam. They flutter in the breeze like distant memories, waving goodbye. You consider adding one of your own, maybe blue, but decide instead to just sit beneath them a while. Today's assignment: clean the ladles. Again. This time, though, there's a twist. It's not just about maintenance. It's about rotation. You see, the monks believe that overuse of one ladle leads to imbalance, not in the wood, but in the energy it imparts to the water. So every few weeks, the ladles are swapped out, rested, polished, then stored in the frog chest like tiny sleeping monks of their own. You help retrieve the fresh set from a storage box filled with dry leaves and cedar shavings. Each ladle is slightly different. One is longer than the others. One has a cracked handle repaired with twine. Another is oddly round, more like a scoop than a spoon. You hand them out one by one like sacred instruments, because here they are. After polishing them, you assist with a short training session for 2 new novices who are still struggling with the one ladle only bathing rule. You don't need to soak, says one monk. You just need to begin. The younger novice nods solemnly, then proceeds to accidentally fling water directly into his eye. You've begun, the monk replies, not missing a beat. Later, you're asked to document water use from the last moon cycle. It's done using a long strip of bamboo split flat and inked with notches, dates, and weather symbols. The symbols are wonderfully unscientific dots for drizzle spirals for storms, and one squiggly line for rain that promised but chickened out. You copy it carefully, tracing the lines with a fine charcoal-tipped stick. Each curve tells a story when the water fell, how much, whether it came with thunder or frogs or both. The monks don't keep spreadsheets. They keep poetry disguised as record-keeping. You ask why they don't carve it into stone. Because water changes, the abbot says, so we write on things that can forget. Midday brings sun and steam. The air hums with insects and evaporating moisture. You help 2 monks inspect the stone steps that lead up to the cistern's top rim. One has begun to tilt slightly, probably due to ground settling. Rather than panic, the monks simply tilt their heads to match. Earth shifts, one says. We shift with it. You wedge a flat stone under the tilted step and press down. It holds. For now. Later in the meditation hall, you overhear a debate between 2 senior monks. It's soft-spoken, but sharp. One argues that the tower should eventually be sealed for good as a sacred relic. The other insists it must always remain usable. A relic is silent, he says, but this tower speaks. Historians would love this conversation. They'd ask questions about the role of functionality in spiritual artifacts, about the line between the practical and the divine. They'd write papers, footnotes, dissertations. Here it ends with one monk shrugging and offering the other a sesame cracker. The tower stands nearby, saying nothing. That evening, a special tea is prepared using water from the very bottom of the cistern. It's darker, richer. The flavor is faintly metallic, slightly earthy like drinking time itself. The monks sip slowly, each lost in thought. You sip and close your eyes. You imagine the water being pulled from the clay belly of the tower, rising through the bamboo chute, held in a bowl polished smooth by countless fingers. You imagine its journey from sky to leaf, to spout, to silence. You taste all of that in one sip. You think of the fish, the flowers, the little cloth sachets bobbing like invisible prayers. You think of how many hands built this thing, How many eyes watched it fill? How many hearts waited for it to do exactly what it's doing now? Hold steady. As you walk back to your mat, under a sky smeared with indigo and fire, the frogs begin their song again, loud and absurdly cheerful. The tower is silent, but inside it, something shifts. Drip. The kind of sound that reminds you the tower is not a relic. It's a rhythm. The morning begins with smoke. Not fire, just the gentle kind that drifts from bundles of dried herbs set alight in clay braziers around the tower. It's cleansing day. You're handed a bundle of smoldering lemongrass neem and dried basil bound tightly with twine and smelling like someone tried to burn a salad. You wave it slowly along the base of the tower, letting the smoke trail along its cracks and seams just as you were shown. The idea is simple. Smoke chases out what water can't. Insects, mold, spirits who overstayed their welcome. The monks don't seem too worried about which. If it can crawl or whisper, one says, "We smoke it." As you move, the tower seems to shimmer slightly in the morning light, smoke tracing its curves like a veil. You notice new cracks in the surface, not serious ones, just the fine webbing that clay always develops when it dries and drinks again. You make a note to patch them later with fresh slurry. It's a mix of fine clay ash and powdered rice husk, creamy and strangely satisfying to smear with your fingers like frosting a giant sacred cake. After cleansing comes chanting. Not the usual meditative kind, but something with rhythm, almost a lullaby. The monks chant as they circle the tower barefoot, and in silence between verses, the sound reverberates off the tower walls, looping back into itself, until you can't tell where the voices end and the tower begins. One monk explains the ritual, the rain lullaby. You sing to the water, he says, so it doesn't try to escape. He's joking, mostly. After chanting, you assist with another cistern check. This time, it's about clarity, not volume. You lower a clay disc tied to a string into the water. It's called a lotus eye, named for the small flower-shaped hole in its center. As the disc disappears into the depths, you watch closely. The clearer the water, the deeper you can still see the shape of the hole. At about 3.5 arm lengths, it vanishes. The monks nod. Still pure. Then comes cleaning day for the overflow jars, small buried vessels that collect spillover from the main tank during particularly heavy rains. These don't hold much, but they matter. They're the monastery's emergency fund hidden beneath layers of earth and time. You help unearth the lid of one, lifting it gently. Inside is water so still it reflects the sky like a mirror. A few sips are scooped, swirled, sniffed. A lotus petal is dropped in. It floats flat, clean. You smile. There's something deeply satisfying about backup water being just as beautiful as the main supply. A debate breaks out in the courtyard after lunch, cassava stew with chili and ginger. Two monks argue about the shape of future cisterns. One insists that tall and narrow cools the water better. The other claims wide and shallow allows more evaporation and spiritual breathing. You're not sure what spiritual breathing means, but you nod like you do. Maybe one novice pipes up, "We build one shaped like a turtle." Silence. Then a thoughtful hum. The abbot doesn't reject it outright. "We shall draw it." Later, you find yourself helping sketch possible designs in the dust behind the kitchen. Circles, ovals. One design has 4 stubby legs and a head poking out, complete with little eye holes. It would leak, someone says, but it would be cute, another counters. Historians would probably faint. Toward dusk, the patching begins. You smear the slurry over the fine cracks, pressing it in with your palms, smoothing it with a flat reed. Each touch reconnects you with the labor that went into this thing. The weight, the care, the sheer patience of making a hollow mountain by hand. You hum as you work quietly, then louder, a tune you don't remember learning. Maybe the tower taught it to you. The sun sets in molten gold. You sit nearby with a bowl of warm water steeped with dried plum and salt cleansing, yes, but also slightly addictive. You sip slowly. A breeze picks up. The braziers have gone out, but their scent lingers. Smoke and earth, basil and clay. The tower stands patched, smoked, and sung to. "Ready for another storm," a monk says. You nod. But deep down, you know this isn't just about being ready for rain. It's about becoming the kind of person who builds a tower before the clouds come. Who watches the sky without flinching? Who listens for drips in the dark? That night, you sit cross-legged at the base of the cistern with your back against the wall. You close your eyes and listen. Drip, tick, glug. just enough music to dream by. You begin the day covered in bees. Not on purpose, not dangerously, just accidentally. You were trying to sweep the corner behind the eastern wall of the tower, the one where old clay pots are stored sun-baked and moss-dappled when your broom bumped what you thought was a dried gourd. It buzzed. You froze. The bees mercifully did not attack. They simply swarmed around you for a moment, then settled again, unimpressed by your panic. A monk nearby chuckled and waved you over. "Bee pot," he said like this was normal. Apparently some bees had colonized an old cracked jar and were left undisturbed because, as one novice put it, they're polite bees. No stings, just honey and the soft hum of industry. The monks believed the bees help bless the air. You watch them a while, tiny golden-black brushstrokes against the clay. That hum, it turns out, is not unlike the sound the tower makes when it's full and still. Another kind of hive, another kind of miracle. You move on, assigned to sweep and retie the scenting sachets. Some of the older ones have started to mold. You unfasten them, gently open each one like a tiny prayer book, and toss the damp herbs into a compost pile behind the kitchen. You prepare a fresh batch: dried lemongrass, shaved lime rind, 2 cloves, a pinch of crushed betel nut. The monks don't measure. They blend by scent, by memory, by intuition. You follow suit. Tying the sachets with thin cord, you feel like you're bottling weather. When you lower them into the cistern, the surface ripples as if nodding its approval. Around midday, you're invited to assist in one of the stranger maintenance rituals, tower tapping. Not the musical tapping from earlier, this is diagnostic. A senior monk hands you a wooden hammer carved from tamarind wood and shows you how to lightly strike the tower's walls at precise intervals, listening for dull spots that could indicate swelling or trapped air pockets. Tap, wait, move. It's like knocking on a sleeping elephant. You hear a range of notes, low resonant, occasionally flat. When you find one that sounds suspicious, the monk marks it with a smear of ash. You revisit those spots later with a reed probe and inspect for hairline cracks. Only 2 need patching. Good clay, the monk says, patting the wall. Or good karma. You nod. Probably both. After lunch, sour jackfruit curry and sticky rice with sesame salt, you're assigned to help clean the inner ladder again. This time, though, a new detail has been added: engraving. A small section of the interior has been smoothed into a flat panel. You're told it's customary once a tower is complete and fully operational to carve a short verse or blessing into its inner wall, something for the water to remember. You hesitate at first. What could you possibly say to a tower? Then you begin to carve. We waited. You came, we stayed. It's not fancy, not profound, but it feels right. You etch each word slowly, carefully, the bamboo stylus whispering against the clay. Later, a monk adds a second line below yours. Now we carry each other. You smile. In the afternoon, a visiting herbalist from a nearby village arrives bearing gifts: dried turmeric root neem oil and 3 jars of fermented tamarind resin. He offers to bless the tower by applying a protective coating of the tamarind mixture across the upper rim. It's sticky, pungent, and deeply red like the blood of a very determined fruit. You help paint it on with a bundle of reeds tied like a brush. As you work, the tower begins to gleam under the golden light stained with care and story. The herbalist tells tales of other towers long lost, collapsed in earthquakes, abandoned in droughts, swallowed by jungle. His stories are equal parts elegy and warning. Towers don't just hold water, he says. They hold trust. When they fall, people remember. Historians still argue whether these oral accounts are exaggerations or legitimate histories. You think it doesn't really matter. If people remember them, they mattered. At dusk, the abbot leads a short walking meditation around the tower. Not fast, not solemn, just aware. You walk barefoot, heel to toe, around the curve of the structure, listening to your own breath, the distant frogs, the occasional creak of bamboo. Each step is deliberate. The tower looms beside you, unbothered by your thoughts, content to be tower-like. Someone rings a bell once, a long fading note, a signal not of ending, but of resting. That night, you sit near the overflow channel. The moon glints off the water pooled in the outer trench. A frog hops in. Plop. You wonder how many times the tower has seen this exact moment, quiet, silver-lit, slightly muddy. You lean your head against the tower wall. And listen, it is not empty. It is never empty. By now, you recognize the tower's moods. Today, it feels full. Not just with water, but with weight, with memory. The air around it hums with a low pressure you can't name. The tower doesn't groan, it doesn't sigh, but it leans in a way that's more emotional than structural. You feel it when you press your hand to the clay, the stillness of a vessel doing its job too well for too long. So naturally, the monks decide it's time to let it breathe. They call it the turning, a quiet, rare event when the cistern is gently partially emptied into smaller jars and side pots to relieve pressure on the walls. It's not a full draining, more like cracking a window in a too warm room. You help set up the siphon system. It involves a few bamboo tubes, a coil of knotted reed rope, and a large clay jug perched at the perfect angle. The monks don't use pumps. They trust gravity and patience. The water exits slowly, glugging like a thoughtful ox. You watch as the stream flows down the chute and into a receiving jar, a tall ribbed container that looks like it was designed for wine secrets or both. Each monk takes a turn transferring a small portion of water to their own vessel. Then comes the tasting. This time it's ceremonial. Each monk sips from a bowl, dipped directly from the side pot. No added herbs, no filtration, just the raw old water lifted from the belly of the tower. You're invited to do the same. You sip. It's cold, clean, deep. But it carries something else, an almost metallic echo, like the taste of stone soaked in silence. The abbot raises his bowl. This was a storm, once he says, a tantrum from the sky. Now it is calm. You nod, wondering how many storms you've swallowed without realizing. After the tasting, the monks pour the remainder into smaller clay jars and bury them near the vegetable beds. For dry weeks, someone explains, or generous guests. Later, you assist in polishing the now exposed inner rim of the cistern. It's a delicate process involving rice, ash paste, coconut husk cloths, and your fingers. You move slowly in circles as though massaging memory back into the clay. One monk leans in and whispers, "If it squeaks, you're doing it wrong." You pause. "It's squeaking." He nods. "Then you're doing it right." By midday, the sun presses down like a hot palm on your back. You escape to the shaded side of the tower and collapse onto a mat just in time to overhear two novices debating the best way to collect dew. One swears by woven flax cloth tied to branches overnight. The other insists that the real trick is to use glazed tiles laid at an angle. They drip faster, he says, with the gravity of someone explaining how to catch ghosts. You don't join the debate, but you do wonder if there's dew in the tower right now. Ancient dew, collected without ever having been noticed. In the afternoon, the older monks start a new project, crafting a wind bell to hang from the canopy above the tower. It's not to scare birds or summon rain, it's to let the tower know the wind is visiting. You help carve the clay chime, a small disc etched with concentric ripples like the surface of disturbed water. When the wind comes, the bell will speak. Not loudly, just enough to say, "I'm here." Before sunset, the bell is strung from a length of twine hung just above the bamboo chute. It doesn't ring yet. No wind, just stillness, which you've learned is its own kind of sound. That night, after a modest dinner of boiled sweet potato garlic leaves and tamarind broth, you return to the tower alone. The moonlight reflects off the water in the overflow pool, where two frogs are staging a wrestling match that no one seems interested in refereeing. You sit on the warm clay curve of the base and stare up. The sky has cleared. A few stars blink through the haze. You hear the faint clack of the wind bell moving slightly, just a soft ting, like a spoon tapping the lip of a bowl. You reach into your satchel and pull out the bird-shaped whistle from days ago, the one you found behind the tower. You blow it once, soft, hollow, a little flat, then again. The frogs pause. The bell tings. The water answers. Not loudly, just a ripple, just enough. You close your eyes. The tower is lighter now, still full, still strong, but breathing again. You breathe with it. You wake to the sound of wind, not a gust or a howl, but a long, slow exhale that moves through the banana leaves like a monk sweeping a courtyard. It's the kind of breeze that carries memory, not motion. You sit up and immediately hear it again. Ting, ting. The wind bell above the cistern is singing. You pull on your robe and step outside. The air is cool and dry. The storm cycles have paused, leaving behind a breathless calm and a sky the color of worn jade. The tower stands quiet, but alert, like a sentinel awaiting the next chapter. Today the abbot announces a simple task: rescribe the records. It's been nearly 60 days since the last major rainfall. 60 days of storage, of rationing, of careful observation. And so, like all things in the monastery, it's time to translate experience into permanence. You gather with 2 monks and a novice in the storage hut, where scrolls of palm leaf bamboo strips and ink-soaked cotton swatches are unrolled like ancient maps. One set of records tracks rainfall patterns using sun symbols and spirals. Another lists daily water consumption by activity chanting, cooking, bathing, meditation. You're handed a split bamboo slat in a bone stylus and told to copy rainfall records. The script is pictographic, half writing, half memory. A short line for a drizzle, a swirled spiral for a monsoon, a jagged dash for rain that startled and then ran away. You draw slowly, deliberately. Later, the novice assigned to water math reads aloud from the usage charts. Tea preparation, 8 ladles a day. Bowl rinsing, 4 ladles. Laundry 3 per person per week. Everyone nods until someone notices a discrepancy in the ritual incense boiling category. 2 ladles, a monk says, raising an eyebrow. That's aspirational, someone admits. There's a ripple of quiet laughter, and the abbot simply scratches the number out with his thumb and writes sensible amount in its place. Next comes the story scroll. Unlike the charts and numbers, this one holds the narrative, what monks call the long water. It tells the story of this particular cistern, how it was built by whom, and what it has survived. You're invited to add a paragraph. You hesitate. How do you summarize weeks of drips, ladles, frogs, fish, smoke, cracked leaves, and whispered songs? You write. The water never asked for praise, only patience. They accept it. By midday, you're helping with the most curious project of all, building a clay model of the tower. It's not for worship. It's not even especially detailed. It's for children. The village school down the hill is teaching a unit on traditional water systems, and the monks have offered to donate a model to show how the old ways still work. You help shape the base, a wide squat pot with a thin funnel topped by a ridged cap. The bamboo chute is simulated with a rolled leaf. The catchment roof is painted onto the clay with ash and turmeric. You ask the monk working beside you why he adds so much care to the miniature leaf shingles. Because someone will remember this one, he says, and maybe build a real one. Once the model is fired and cooled, it will be carried down the hill by hand, 1 monk per leg of the journey, as a show of respect. No cart, the abbot says. Carts don't bow. In the late afternoon, you climb the actual tower's scaffolding one last time. It's not broken. It's not leaking. It doesn't need anything from you. But you want to look. From the top, the whole monastery opens like a woven mat. The dormitories, the kitchen, the meditation hall, the fish pond. Beyond the walls, rice paddies gleam like green coins, and the village path winds away like a story being told. You lower the last scenting sachet of the season-dried mango peel basil and a pinch of salt. A farewell of sorts. That night, you help clean the frog chest. You remove each ladle, wipe it with oiled cloth, and place it back gently. The one with the cracked handle has been repaired again. Someone added a decorative thread of gold fiber around the grip. A small flourish, a sign of affection. As the lanterns dim and the monks settle into their mats, you return to the base of the tower. You sit, back straight, hands open. You don't say anything. Neither does the tower. But the wind bell chimes once lightly, and somewhere inside the water shift. Not as a wave, not as a ripple, as a breath. Held, released. You close your eyes and listen. This is not an end, just the moment before the sky forgets itself again. You wake before the bell, no dream, no sound, just a quiet knowing that your time here is drawing to a close. The rain tower waits outside, patient as ever. You rise, wrap your robe, and walk out beneath a sky still smudged with stars. The air is cool and carries the faint scent of burnt tamarind. Somewhere behind the kitchen, a monk stirs coals for morning tea. You make your way to the tower. Today's duty is simple ceremonial, the final dip. It's not final forever, just final for now. Each monk, before they leave for pilgrimage or travel, offers 1 ladle of water to the tower and 1 to themselves. A mutual blessing, a circle made from clay and trust. You join the line at sunrise, coconut ladle in hand. When your turn comes, you draw the water slowly. It's cooler than you expect, heavy with meaning. You raise it above your head, then pour half of it into a small bowl that trickles down into the tower's chute. It disappears with a soft gulp. The rest you sip, not to quench thirst, to remember. You taste days spent smoothing clay and patching seams. You taste lotus blossoms and neem smoke. You taste laughter, sweat, and the way frogs always arrive right after rain. The abbot nods to you across the courtyard. Tell others, he says softly, we still build towers, not to trap the sky, but to honor it. You help tidy the base, removing leaves from the drainage line, coiling ropes, brushing soot from the outer rim. One monk adds a new mark to the interior wall, a single spiral. For return, he explains, not just yours, anyone's. By afternoon, a group of monks is folding strips of mulberry paper into lotus shapes. They place them around the tower's base, 21 in total, one for each day since the last rainfall. Each folded blossom has a word inside: silence, breath, wait, fall, hold. You fold one of your own, your word still. Evening falls. The frogs are louder than usual, perhaps sensing the weather shifting again. You gather your few belongings, a dried orange peel, a scrap of cloth scented faintly of basil, and the bird whistle you found behind the tower weeks ago. Before leaving, you pause one last time at the tower's base. You press your palm flat against the clay. It's warm. You listen. Inside, the water moves. And maybe it remembers your hand. It's nearly nightfall when the rain comes back. Not a storm, not a downpour, just the soft kind like someone upstairs finally remembered you were thirsty. The drops fall steadily without rush or roar, and the entire monastery shifts into a kind of quiet readiness. No scrambling, no shouting, just movement slow and certain. You watch from the meditation hall porch as the monks walk toward the tower, one by one, carrying bundles of cloth string and fresh-cut banana leaves. The rain, they say, must always be greeted, especially after absence. You join them in securing the canopy, now thick with patches and reinforcements from weeks of care. Some of the teak leaves have grown mottled, and they're quickly swapped out for newer ones, fresh and pliant. You work in rhythm without instruction, every motion familiar. The tower drinks. You hear it before you see it. The plink of droplets sliding from leaf to shoot the soft rush as they fall into the cistern below. A melody that only plays when the sky permits. Tonight, you're part of a rarer ritual, the double watch. Two monks sit near the tower, alternating in silence throughout the night. Their job is not to guard, but to witness, to ensure the tower fills evenly, that it's not overwhelmed, that the overflow channels do their job, that nothing inside Animal Leaf's spirit gets trapped or forgotten. You take second watch just after midnight. The air is cold enough now that breath fogs slightly. You sit cross-legged beneath the awning beside a single oil lamp and listen. The tower creaks just slightly as the clay adjusts. Water levels rise slowly. You dip a stick with markings into the tank every hour. It climbs, 5 notches, then 6. You record each change on a bark strip with a burnt twig. Somewhere during your watch, a fox appears, silent, gray eyes bright. It walks past the base of the tower, pauses to sniff the air, and continues on, leaving a trail of tiny, perfect paw prints behind. You don't speak, neither does it, but you both seem to understand. By dawn, the tower is nearly full. The monks return quietly, bearing a bowl of warm ginger tea and a woven mat. You stretch out beside the base, where the clay is now warm from within. You're offered a final task, one that few get. You are to mark the day. On a long, flat strip of wood held in the records room, you carved the symbol for a balanced fill, a full tower, no overflow, no loss. It's a rare icon, a circle within a square, surrounded by 4 short strokes. It's simple, satisfying. The abbot watches as you etch the final line. You'll carry this with you, now he says. You nod, not just in memory. He smiles. No, in the way you wait for storms. You walk once more around the tower, touching its seams, patting the patched places like scars on a well-lived face. You smile at the clay frog, at the scenting sachets, at the wind bell, which chimes one last time, just as you step away. A farewell, or a hello depending on your direction. You breathe in the smell of wet clay and leaf smoke, and as the rain fades, you realize something. This tower was never just for water. It was for this feeling, this rhythm, this breath. By now, the rain tower has become part of your body. You don't just hear it, you feel it. In the soles of your feet as you walk the courtyard, in the backs of your hands as you carry water bowls, in your chest where your breath matches the slow rise and fall of rainfall remembered in clay. Today is Tools Day, which sounds far less poetic than it is. Twice each season, the monks take every tool associated with the tower ladles, ropes, brushes, chisels, even the measuring sticks, and clean oil, mend, or retire them. It's a quiet ritual, but precise. You're given a rag soaked in neem oil and instructed to polish the ladle handles first. Each ladle has a name inscribed in tiny ink strokes on the inside of the curve. Moksha, lotus, third cloud. Even the cracked one has a name, returner. Because it always comes back, says the monk beside you. After polishing, the tools are laid out in the sun handles pointing east as tradition dictates. The sun blesses the grip, you're told. No one quite remembers why, but it feels right. Next come the ropes. Most are made from braided coconut husk, worn soft by weeks of use. Some are too frayed to repair and are cut ceremonially, one monk slicing the middle strand while another chants a short verse about impermanence. You gather the cut ends and help weave them into a small nest placed beside the frog statue. Birds might use it, a novice offers, or spirits with small feet. The brushes used to sweep algae from inside the cistern are softened over a bowl of boiling lemon leaf water, then laid flat to dry. A few are replaced with new ones carved just yesterday by the woodshop novice who insists he's going to be a rain monk, not a scholar. He's shaping up nicely. After lunch, taro mash and mango skin chutney, the monks carry the tools one by one back to their places. No box, no shelf, just cleverly placed hooks carved into shaded sides of the tower under the awning where the wind doesn't reach. Each tool returns to the exact angle it left. Even the ropes are hung like musical instruments, their knots all facing the same direction. You ask why so much order matters. Because chaos leaks, the abbot replies. Then comes the moment of silence. All the monks stand still in the courtyard facing the tower. No chanting, no motion, just standing, listening. You feel it. The water inside shifts again, faint but real, like it knows its tools are home, like it's glad you noticed. That evening, you help prepare the next cycle of scenting sachets. This time, the mixture is special hibiscus dried rosehip and the bark of the rain tree, a species that only flowers after storms. It's lucky, someone whispers. It's fragrant, another adds, shrugging. You tie the sachets carefully, folding the corners like little parcels of wind. After dark, the tower's lit with a circle of butter lamps. Each one flickers slightly in the breeze, reflected in the wet clay, and the faint trickle of overflow into the channel below. You walk one slow circle around the tower, holding the last unused ladle in your hand. You don't dip it this time. You just carry it, letting it remind you what it feels like to hold water without needing to pour. To wait without needing to act. To build without needing to keep. The air smells of copper this morning. Not metal exactly, but that sharp electric edge that comes before rain or after lightning. You step outside and notice the color of the clouds. Not gray, not white. Something in between, like the underbelly of a fish. The monks are unusually quiet. Even the novices seem to walk softer. Today is the day of rebalancing. The tower, now near capacity, must be equalized, not drained, not disturbed, but gently leveled to maintain its inner silence. Think of it as recentering a sleeping body without waking it. Your task, shadow the abbot. He moves like water himself, each step placed, each motion deliberate. He carries a ladle in one hand and a length of dyed cord in the other. You ask what the cord is for, marking the still. You don't know what that means yet. You follow anyway. At the base of the tower, he kneels and lowers the cord into the chute, holding it just so. After a long pause, he pulls it back. Only a third is wet. He nods. We begin. A team of monks begins the slow extraction using side jars spaced in a half circle around the tower. You help carry the water from the main chamber into each jar ladle by ladle. It's not for storage. It's for settling. The idea is to allow the cistern's water body to rest evenly temperature, depth, density. A restless tank can create unwanted echoes, make the walls strain, and give the frogs headaches. Probably. You try not to overthink it. Just ladle. Breathe. Ladle again. The cord is dipped every half hour. When 2/3 come back wet, the abbot murmurs, "Nearly there." Around noon, something strange happens. The tower whistles. Not loudly, not musically, but a high, soft tone emerges from the bamboo chute. It lasts maybe 5 seconds, then fades. No one reacts. You look around. A novice smiles. It's thinking. Later you ask the abbot about the sound. It's the clay adjusting, he says, or the air inside moving, or maybe it just needed to speak. You decide not to question it. After rebalancing, the overflow channel is redirected to the herb garden. The mint perks up visibly, as if recognizing a kindred spirit. You press your fingers into the soil. Damp, cool, ready. By mid-afternoon, a soft drizzle begins. Not heavy enough to activate the full catchment system, but enough to coat the roof in sheen and scent. You sit under the awning and watch droplets trail down the leaves, collecting along their spines like silver beads. A small visitor joins you, a lizard pale green tail, too long for its body. It scurries along the base of the tower, pauses, then presses its belly flat against the clay. You whisper, "It's warm, isn't it?" It doesn't answer, but it doesn't leave either. That evening, the monks gather for a final walk around the tower, 7 times, no chanting. Barefoot, silent eyes low. You follow, counting your steps. On the last pass, the abbot places the dyed cord beside the frog. It's stiff now, marked with rainwater and time. A new novice picks it up. Should we wash it? The abbot shakes his head. Let it remember. That night, you sit beside the cistern with your back pressed against it. You can feel the stillness inside, not emptiness stillness. Like it has gathered all the noise of the world and decided to hold it gently without letting any spill. You breathe with it. Not fast, not slow, just enough. It begins with a question. What happens when the water forgets? A novice asks it over breakfast between bites of banana porridge and sips of ginger tea, and for a moment, no one answers. The monks glance at one another. The abbot smiles. You'll see, he says, and so today becomes a lesson in forgetting. The monks lead you to the edge of the monastery grounds beyond the herb garden, past the last sleeping pot of overflow water, to a grove where ancient clay cisterns once stood, ruined now. Cracked, collapsed, swallowed by vines and time. The towers here are silent in a different way. You walk among the ghosts of containers. One tower lies split in half its curve, now a cradle for fallen leaves. Another has been reduced to a cracked ring like a clay collar once worn by the earth itself. A frog leaps from a hollow and disappears into the underbrush. The abbot kneels beside the smallest ruin and brushes moss from its rim. This one held rain during a war, he says, until someone forgot to cover it. You don't need to ask what happened. The ruins tell their story towers abandoned, not because they failed, but because someone failed them. No patching, no rebalancing, no listening. You return to your own tower differently now. You walk slower, you touch the clay more gently, you hear it better. Back at the monastery, the monks prepare a ritual they perform only once per year, the ceremony of the empty jar. They take a small pot, unfired, fragile and plain, and carry it through the courtyard. Inside is nothing, and that's the point. We honor the water, one monk says, by remembering how it feels when it's not there. You follow the procession in silence. At the base of the rain tower, the jar is set down. No offerings are placed inside. No ladles are dipped. No flowers are floated. Just space. Then, without ceremony, the jar is broken. One monk lifts it over his head, lowers it to the stone, and lets it fall. Crack. The sound is sharp and clean. The fragments are left there until the next rain. The monks return to their duties. No one speaks of it again. You, though, feel it. The crack still echoes. Later, you help seal a small chip near the tower's mouth. It's not leaking yet, but you know now what even the tiniest forgotten fracture can become. You mix the slurry with extra care, pressing it gently into the flaw, smoothing it with a flat stone. When you finish, you trace a small spiral in the wet clay, not for decoration, just for memory. That night, you hear the frog singing again. The rain tower stands behind you, whole, remembered, held. The day begins not with bells or chanting, but with laughter. A novice has accidentally dropped a bar of soap into the cistern. It's not just any soap, it's homemade, crafted from ash coconut oil and crushed herbs shaped like a squat little turtle. The poor turtle slipped from his grasp mid-bath, bounced off the bamboo rim, and plopped into the tower with an undignified blop. No one is angry. A few monks even chuckle as the abbot sighs and gently lowers a retrieval ladle into the water. It takes 20 minutes to fish the thing out. When they do, the soap turtle is placed on a sun-warmed stone to dry, slightly soggy but triumphant. He's learned to swim, someone says. You all laugh again. It's a reminder that even sacred things occasionally need rescuing. After the excitement, the day's work turns toward one of the most delicate tasks, echo mapping. You didn't even know that was a thing. A group of monks lowers a long bamboo tube into the cistern and hums softly down it, adjusting pitch until they find the tower's true note. It's different every season, affected by volume, air pressure, and temperature. Today, the tower sings back in G sharp, a soft, deep vibration that tickles your ribs when you lean close enough. You spend most of the morning working with the Echo team, recording tone variations from different spots along the tower wall. You trace the shapes the vibrations make with charcoal dust spread across a clay slab. The dust dances, then settles in spiral patterns. It's the tower's signature, the monk beside you whispers. By afternoon, a team sets up small mirrors around the tower's base to reflect sunlight into hard-to-reach cracks. This allows for visual inspection without disturbing the interior. You crouch beside one and peer upward. The clay surface, normally in shadow, gleams like polished amber. You spot a faint scratch, maybe from a falling leaf, maybe from the soap turtle. You mark it for touch-up anyway. Later, the novices organize a small celebration. Nothing official, just cups of cool tamarind water and a makeshift dessert made from honey sesame and roasted rice. You all sit beneath the canopy, the scent of mint and old clay in the air, and watch clouds drift lazily by. Someone plays a reed flute. Another hums the tower's G sharp. The tower doesn't answer this time. It listens. Before evening, you help anchor the scenting sachets for the coming week. This batch includes dried marigold petals and a new edition cinnamon bark gifted by a visiting merchant. The bark is tough to tie, but the smell, warm and earthy, feels like late summer and stories told over embers. As you tie the final sachet, a monk leans beside you. Do you think the water can remember the music? You don't answer right away. You just close your eyes, press your palm to the clay, and listen. There's no song, no vibration, but there's presence. That night, under a sky layered with starlight and sleeping frogs, the wind bell chimes again, once twice faint as breath. And from deep within the tower, gung. Not loud, but exactly the right note. You begin the morning in shadow. Not because it's cloudy though it is, but because the tower casts a longer shape today. The light is angled differently. The air is heavier, a shift you can't quite explain. The monks say nothing. But their movements are slower, more deliberate, more reverent. Today is offering day. Not to gods, not to spirits, to the tower. It has served us, the abbot says, so we serve it. You join a procession of monks, each carrying something small, a flower, a pinch of salt, a folded scrap of mulberry paper, a single polished stone. The novices walk barefoot, and in silence their robes clean their hair, slicked back with water from the overflow basin. You carry a sliver of clay. From the very first batch used to shape the tower's base. It had been pressed into a tile and stored since that first week you arrived. Now it's dry and cracked but whole, a fossil of intention. You place it at the base of the tower, just beside the frog and the broken jar from the empty vessel ritual. You don't say anything. You don't need to. One by one the offerings are placed, not into the cistern but around it, at its feet. As if it were a seated elder surrounded by grandchildren. Flowers wilt gently onto its flanks. Pebbles form a ring. Salt sparkles like dew. Even the soap turtle is brought back now, dried and honored with a marigold crown. Someone places a ladle upside down. Another tucks a single feather into a clay seam. No one directs this. It just happens. By mid-morning, a chant begins, not the usual melody, but a deep, droning hum. No words. Just breath carried through generations. The tower hums too. You swear you feel it beneath your feet, through your spine. Later, a monk traces the outline of the tower's shadow with white chalk dust. It forms a wide oval, imperfect, interrupted by rocks and roots, but unmistakably alive. A novice adds a swirl at the center. Wind, he says. You add a dot beside it. Stillness. In the afternoon, you help coat the outer walls with a final mix of tamarind resin and ash. This is the last layer of the season, a sealant, yes, but also a closing. The tower is ready to hold, to wait, to rest. You move with care, painting the mixture upward in slow strokes, your fingers stained a deep crimson gray. As you work, a thin line of ants marches down from the roof undisturbed, continuing their endless journey around the tower's rim. You let them pass. When the coating is complete, the abbot approaches with a bundle of tiny bells. He hangs 3 above the chute, tied together with faded red string. They ring when the wind is just right, he says. And when it isn't, they wait. You nod. Like the tower. Like us, he replies. That night, you stay behind while the others return to the hall. You sit at the base of the tower, tracing the chalk shadow with your toe. You press your palm to the warm clay and whisper thank you. From inside, the faintest echo rises not of water moving, but of memory shifting. A breath, a pulse, the deep, contented silence of something that knows it has done its work and is ready for the next time. The tower is asleep. Not literally, of course, but in the same way that old trees sleep in winter or mountain paths rest between footprints. It is full now, sealed, tended, and quiet. The frogs have moved on. The wind bell rarely rings. There's nothing left to do today, and so you rest with it. The monks begin their fast, not of food, but of tasks. For one day each moon cycle, no one touches the tower. No inspections, no repairs, no dipping. It is the day of still water. You wake slowly for once, not to the sound of tools or chanting, but to the absolute absence of motion. Even the birds seem to understand. The entire monastery moves slower, like breath held just before sleep. Breakfast is silent. A bowl of rice gruel, lightly salted, nothing more. You sit in a circle with the others, listening to the soft clink of bowls and the rustle of robes. Afterward, you walk alone toward the tower, careful not to step too close. Today, no one approaches it. A rope of braided grass has been placed in a loose ring around its base, not a barrier, just a reminder. You sit outside the ring and wait. From this distance, the tower looks different. Less like a structure and more like an idea. A prayer made solid. The curve of its shoulders, the way it leans ever so slightly west, the subtle discoloration in its clay, all of it feels like a face you've come to know, eyes closed, breathing slow. You take out your bird whistle. You don't blow it. You just hold it in your palm, remembering how it first chirped like a startled kettle, how the frogs paused, how the water seemed to answer. Midday comes. The sun rests directly above the tower, casting its shadow into itself. You watch as light spills down its sides, pooling gently in the fine cracks like gold paint. A novice beside you murmurs, "It's shining." You nod. Afternoon brings a gentle breeze. The wind bell twitches but does not chime. The air smells of old things, baked clay, faded flowers, and the faintest memory of tamarind smoke. You notice the ants returning, tracing the same path along the base as yesterday, undeterred by silence. You whisper, "You're not supposed to be here today." They ignore you. You smile. As dusk approaches, the rope ring is gently removed and coiled beside the frog statue. No words are spoken, no rituals performed, just the simple acknowledgement the day is done. You and the monks walk a wide arc around the tower one last time. No footsteps within the grass ring, no eyes turned upward. You walk like shadows, like water moving underground. After dark, you return with a lamp and sit at a respectful distance. The flame flickers once then stills. The tower does not move, but you do. Inside, dawn smells like dust and turmeric. The rain has held off for days now, but the air is thick with waiting. Everything frogs leaves your own heartbeat, feels suspended like the moment just before a bowl tips. You wake before the monks today, not intentionally, you just do. And for the first time, you're alone with the tower. The courtyard is hushed. The wind bell hangs motionless. The clay gleams faintly with dew. You step closer barefoot, feeling each patch of earth, as if walking across a sleeping creature's back. There's a tradition no one talks about directly: the last circle. When a visitor student monk or curious traveler feels their time here is truly done, they perform a solo walk around the tower. It isn't required. No one announces it. But you've seen the footprints, the worn arc in the grass, the quiet nods from those who've left before. You walk slowly. Once, then twice, then a third time. Each lap feels different. The first is full of memory of days spent scooping, patching, ladling. The second is full of detail. You notice a new crack, a faded marigold petal, a tiny green beetle nestled against a seam. The third is just walking, breathing, being. You stop and place your hand on the tower side. It's warm, still alive, still listening. After breakfast, the monks begin preparing their water journal, a full inventory of current levels, damage logs, weather patterns, and community requests. The idea is to record not only what the tower holds, but what it has meant. You're asked to write a page. Your hand shakes a little. You write. This is not a place. It is a practice to carry, to mend, to wait, to love the rain without needing it to come. The abbot reads it and nods. Before you go, you're gifted a bowl. Unglazed, palm-sized, coiled from the same clay as the tower. If you care for it, the monk says it will hold more than water. You pack light. The bird whistle, the soap turtle now fully dry, the chalk spiral you pocketed without telling anyone, and this bowl. Your sandals kick up little puffs of dust as you pass the garden, the kitchen, the bell wall. No one follows, but you feel watched in the kindest way. At the edge of the monastery, you stop one last time. You turn back toward the tower. It stands still, unmoved, but somehow not unchanged. A gust of wind slips through the canopy. The wind bell chimes once, twice, and then the clouds shift, and you begin walking again. Your footsteps carry you farther from the monastery, but the rain tower stays with you, not as an image, not as memory, but as rhythm. A pacing in your bones, a weight in your hands like a ladle always half full. You descend the forest path, slowly, careful not to crush the small ferns growing between the stones. The bowl clinks softly in your satchel. You pass villagers on their way, uphill, some with baskets, others with nothing but questions in their eyes. A few smile, sensing where you've been. One child, sticky with guava juice, points to your clay-streaked robe and whispers, "Rain friend." You nod. You don't correct her. You reach a riverbank by late afternoon, where the water is clear and moving fast, impatient with its own direction. You kneel, scoop some into your palm, and let it fall through your fingers. It feels different now. Temporary, elsewhere. Across the river, you spot a crumbling tower, half buried in vines. Not like the one you tended. This one is leaning, its upper half gone. A single bamboo pole sticks out like a question mark. You cross the bridge to investigate. The clay is coarse chipped, but unmistakably kin to the tower you've known. You run your fingers across its flank, find a mossy crack, a fallen scent pouch, half buried in soil. And suddenly you understand, this one was forgotten, but not beyond healing. You begin clearing brush, not because anyone asked, not because it's your task, but because you can. By sunset, you've uncovered the base, cleaned one side, and found a name scratched faintly into the rim thonda. You whisper it. You press your palm to the clay. It's cool, dry, waiting. You take the bowl from your satchel, fill it with river water, and pour it slowly, gently into the mouth of the old cistern. The clay drinks, and just before the last light slips behind the trees, a single frog croaks. Somewhere far off, a bell chimes. You smile and begin again. You're lying down now, back nestled into your favorite pillow hands, tucked just right. Your breathing slows, and in that gentle rhythm, the inhale, the exhale, you can still feel the tower. It no longer towers above you. It rests beside you, calm and full. Its clay walls humming quietly warm from the day's sun and the weight of memory. The scent of tamarind lemongrass and old rain still lingers in the air. You remember the frogs, the soft chime of bells in the dusk. The way the water shifted in its belly, not urgently but faithfully. Every patch you mended, every ladle you dipped, every story the monks whispered into still water, those things stay with you now. Not in the noisy corners of your mind, but somewhere deeper, quieter. You were not just passing through that monastery. You were part of it, a caretaker, a listener, a breath in the tower's long memory. And even now, far from the clay walls and scenting sachets, you still carry the same rhythm. Hold, wait, pour, hold again. The world outside is still turning, but inside, for just a little longer, you are still. No movement, no task, only presence. Let your muscles soften, let the sounds fade. The tower is full. You've done enough. You are enough. Sleep well, rain friend.